Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Todd Lochbeck. I'm the Director of Employer Relations and Engagement within the Shavet Glabach Center for Career Strategy and Professional Development. This is our fourth annual installment of TechUCation, and I think it's gotten even better every single year. We've gathered tonight an amazing group of individuals, across all areas of the industry, all levels of experience, and I'm really looking forward to having them share their insight with you. The agenda tonight, we're going to hear from our highly distinguished keynote in just a few moments. Then we're going to hear from a very sort of well-connected industry insider on the state of the tech industry. And then we're going to close it out with a wonderful panel of young alumni from all the YU schools, including one of our graduate schools, from very diverse backgrounds, all to talk about technology. And technology, it doesn't necessarily mean computer science. Obviously, computer science is incredibly important, and we're absolutely going to cover that tonight. But we're also going to talk about perhaps some other career paths for students that are interested in tech, but maybe aren't computer science majors, but they want to work in the tech industry. And we're going to get to all that good stuff in just a little bit. Just a few notes on some other upcoming events that we have. So this is the formal kickoff for Tech Week. We did have one event last week, the Aviva info session. If you did miss that, we will have a wonderful alumna currently working there on our panel later today, so you'll still be able to get some information. Tomorrow, we have the Vahim info session at 11 a.m. So if you are interested in making Aliyah, perhaps working in the tech industry in Israel, you definitely don't want to miss that. On this Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., we have the technology meet and greet. Ton of amazing firms and alumni will be joining that. So if you'd like to have one-on-one chats and networking sessions, please be sure to be there. And then finally, next Friday, October 29th, we have the Google Meetup, where we'll be welcoming several alumni and friends of YU currently working at Google to talk about the firm, what they do, and recruiting. And we're also going to have the YU campus recruiter present at that event as well. So please do mark your calendars. But without further ado, because we do have a pretty packed agenda tonight, I'd like to introduce our keynote. A very highly accomplished Yeshiva College and Princeton University alum, Stephen Goldfeder. Stephen is the co-founder and chief executive officer at Offchain Labs. In addition to graduating from YU with a degree in math and science, he holds a PhD from Princeton University, where he worked at the intersection of cryptography and cryptocurrency. He's a co-author of Bitcoin and Cryptocurrency Technologies, which is the leading textbook on cryptocurrencies. He's going to talk a little bit about what he does, how he got there, and how his firm is disrupting blockchain and crypto. Stephen, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for coming. Really, really great to be here. And although it's not in person, but hopefully next time. We're really great to see so many familiar and new faces, and excited to be here. So I'm Stephen, and I'm going to talk tonight a little bit about my YU experience and my career path and how I got here. And I think at the end we'll have some time for questions, but it's a bit of an intimate crowd, so you can feel free to interrupt me as well. And so I graduated YU in 2012. I majored in math and computer science, and it wasn't that long ago, but it seems from what I hear that a lot has changed since in the department. For context, I think the department was a bit smaller back then. We had about 3 students in my algorithms class and maybe 2 other computer science students in my graduating class. And a lot of the faculty that to you seem like they've been there forever are actually since my time only about 9 years ago. I think Professor Kelly is the only faculty member that's still that overlaps. And I remember when he joined, I was in his class the first semester at YU. So a bit of a different experience, but lots of continuity as well. After YU, I started graduate school. I started my PhD in Princeton in 2013. I was interested in cryptography, security, and privacy. And back then, crypto meant something else than it did today. Crypto meant cryptography. And it's since come, of course, to mean cryptocurrencies. And I've sort of had the opportunity to work in both of those. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies were quite young at the time. My advisor, Professor Arvin Rayanan, he was first getting into the field, and I sort of came along with him for the ride. So most of my work in crypto is in cryptography at the intersection of cryptocurrencies. My graduate work was mostly focused on securing digital assets using cryptography, special digital signature types to protect digital assets and make sure that key custody was secure and really built some early infrastructure in this space, and infrastructure that's actually built out by many companies today, although not the company that I'm currently a part of. I wrote a textbook during my graduate career on crypto again meaning cryptocurrencies at the time, actually since, and with a few others at Princeton. And that textbook, as Todd mentioned, is used in courses around the world, and I think it's currently translated in about 5 languages. Towards the end of my PhD, that's when I started working with another professor, not my advisor, Professor Ed Felton at Princeton and Arbitrum, and we worked on what it would eventually become. Ed would eventually become my co-founder at Off-Chain Labs, and Arbitrum was a scaling solution for smart contracts. And it was clear to us at the time that one of 2 things were true: either cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, they would go away and they wouldn't become very important, or they would continue to grow and far surpass the existing technology. And we didn't believe that the technology was going anywhere. We thought adoption would continue to outpace the supply. And we realized that there was a need here for scaling solutions that continue to build on the foundational infrastructure here, the foundational principles of decentralization and security, while allowing more and more users to onboard and use this technology. So we published Arbitrum initially as an academic paper in 2018. And we spun out the company 3 years ago at the end of 2018 when I graduated Princeton. And Arbitrum actually has an earlier story than that. So Ed Felton, my co-founder, he first started looking into Arbitrum in 2013. He started researching this idea. And actually, if you look on YouTube, the earliest video you'll find that mentions Arbitrum is a 2014, fall 2014 video, fall 2014 semester or class video. And the reason why that date is interesting is because Ethereum, we're built on top of Ethereum today. Ethereum only launched in the summer of 2015, so about 6 months later after the video. And the story is basically Ed was the deputy CTO of the US government and senior advisor to President Obama. He left Princeton for a few years, and sort of the idea of Arbitrum sort of died down with him a bit. When he came back, I approached him together with another student who would also later be my co-founder at Off-Chain Labs, Harry Kolodner. And we said, hey, that Arbitrum thing, it looks like smart contracts are going to be a real thing. We should build that out. We built that out in the academic context first, and then we continue that in the commercial context. And once we left Princeton. And fast forward a few years later, I'm full-time, of course, in my company. And Ed, who was a professor at Princeton for 27 years, has left Princeton as well, is retired, and is also full-time as in the company as well. So I think it's grown past what we would have imagined at the time for sure. And so let me describe briefly how our tech works in a nutshell. I'll try to keep it relatively simple just to give you a flavor of what we do, but not go too deep into the nuts and bolts. But if you're curious, you can feel free to read online or email me afterwards. You can think of an Ethereum smart contract as a trustless computer. And by trustless, I really mean trusted, something that you can trust without relying on anyone else. So Ethereum is basically a computer that you can trust. And it can do cool things because it can also escrow money. So you can, for example, say, hey, I want to play tic-tac-toe. Say I'm going to play you a game of tic-tac-toe. Now we can go to some website and play tic-tac-toe. We each pay, let's say, $1 to the operator. But this is not trustless, right? Because we're relying on the operator for a few things. First of all, we can pay our $1 and then they'll just go away. That's number one, but also they can say, I can win. And they say, no, actually you won, and they pay you. So we're not really, we're very much trusting a third party here. And this is a very toy example. Most of my work does not involve tic-tac-toe, although actually with the current NFT space, a lot of it is very interesting and also does involve some apes and interesting JPEGs as well. So yeah, it's a very fun space. But anyway, the idea is that, so we have this game of tic-tac-toe, and we don't want to rely on a centralized operator. So if only we could have a trusted computer that we can encode, say, the rules of tic-tac-toe in, we can encode the rules of our game, each deposit money, and then the computer is guaranteed to act according to those rules. And that's basically the way I like to describe smart contracts. It's this trusted computer that we can all trust. And it's a really, really powerful primitive, especially when you give it the ability to receive and send money, because it can do things like tic-tac-toe games, but it can also do things like manage complex financial contracts or organizations, or sale of goods and assets and all sorts of investment vehicles. And who knows, we're early on. It can, it's proven already to be a powerful primitive. And I don't think we've seen the last of the really cool innovations that can be done with this technology. But the problem is that Ethereum, which is the dominant smart contract platform today, it's a very slow computer. So by contrast, to give you an example, the entire Ethereum network has less capacity than this laptop that I'm on right now, and probably than the laptop that you're on right now. My laptop is just a standard MacBook, not a very, not some supercomputer laptop. So the entire global network of Ethereum has very, very limited capacity, and it's also quite expensive to use because there's so much demand for this limited capacity that the prices to use it go up and up and up. And what happens is, first of all, it becomes very expensive to use, but this also prices out industries. So one of the popular uses on Ethereum is decentralized exchanges, or exchanging two assets or digital assets. And if the transaction fees are in the tens or hundreds of dollars, we've priced out entire industries. DeFi is decentralized finance, which is the sort of emerging area here. And retail customers are priced out. You can't do a trade that costs where you're trading $2 or $3 or even $50 or $100 of assets if the fee is going to be 10 or hundreds of dollars. And there are also many other examples that are priced out, such as gaming. You can't play tic-tac-toe on the blockchain or more complex games if it's going to cost you tens or hundreds of dollars every time you want to do a move. So scaling solutions do two things. They both increase the capacity and also reduce the cost. And those go hand in hand, because as there's more capacity, the price won't shoot up and there will be more supply, so that the price will stay lower. So on Ethereum today, so how does the tech work on Ethereum? And by the way, there's very good reasons for why Ethereum is limited. It's not like, oh, let's just crank up the capacity of Ethereum. It has to do with keeping the network secure and decentralized and trustless. But on Ethereum today, the way it works is the Ethereum miners, they need to emulate every transaction. So in our game of tic-tac-toe, the miners are actually running those moves, and they're emulating that. They're running the computation, and each move that we do, they're running and verifying every move. But Arbitrum is a layer 2 system that builds on top of Ethereum and uses Ethereum's resources more wisely. It spreads it further. So Ethereum, again, remember, has limited capacity, and Arbitrum uses that capacity, was able to squeeze more into that. And the key idea is to move much of the computation off-chain and only rely on the miners, only rely on the core Ethereum network to resolve disputes. But when there is no dispute, in the happy case, Ethereum miners have to run very little and don't actually have to emulate my transaction. So I'm oversimplifying here, but back to our game of tic-tac-toe. If you and I play tic-tac-toe and we all agree that you won, we don't need the miners to run that transaction. We're in full agreement. We can just tell the miners, hey, you won, you get the money. It's only when there's a disagreement that we need Ethereum to step in. And in order to facilitate this, Arbitrum basically puts just enough data on chain that would allow the miners, allow Ethereum to mediate disputes should they arise. But in the happy case, there are no disputes and the network is much, much more efficient. And even when there are disputes, we can resolve them very, very efficiently. And again, I gave you an example of tic-tac-toe. In practice, what we build is a complex protocol with a virtual machine that gives you the exact same experience as Ethereum. But under the hood, we're actually putting much, much less data on chain than you would for a regular Ethereum transaction, but we're still giving you the same security as Ethereum because you know that it's backed by Ethereum, because if there's a dispute, Ethereum will resolve it. So in the happy case, it's using much less of Ethereum's resources. And when there's a dispute, it will fall back to Ethereum. And this is how we get the security of Ethereum, but are able to increase the capacity and reduce the costs significantly. And that's basically Arbitrum in a nutshell. And that's all I'll talk about. We have a Q&A, so if there are more detailed questions on any of this, I'm happy to go into it. But just something that I'd like to do for the last few minutes of my talk is give you some tips that I've learned along the way. Some of these I've been fortunate enough that advisors have shared with me during my experience. Some of these I wish someone had shared with me. So this is sort of my way to sort of give you some ideas that I've learned along the way, and I think it would be helpful for maximizing your YU experience and really your computer science experience beyond. Number one is try an undergraduate research experience. I joined the YU Bar-Ilan program in its first year and its second year, actually. I liked it so much I went back. And it was in my second year there that I worked with someone named professor there. His name was Yehuda Lindell. And that was my first formal intro into cryptography, and it really set my entire graduate career in motion. It's clear to me that had I not gone there that summer, I would have not continued in cryptography. I would have not found cryptocurrencies, and I wouldn't be doing what I do today, definitely. So that was a really, really pivotal experience for me that was enabled by the YU Bar-Ilan summer program, which I believe still exists today. And corporate internships are sometimes shinier and more glamorous, and they might pay better. But undergraduate summer research can be as or even more impactful on your career, and really, really a great way to spend your summer. And the nice thing is they're often easier to come by. Aside from the Bar-Ilan program, there are many, many other research experiences for undergraduates, and there are plenty of REUs at top universities. And often they're really easy to come by, and they're really, really excellent experiences. Whether you want to go to graduate school, whether you do not want to go to graduate school, want to go into industry, or whether you're not sure, it'll just give you a really good experience. Getting hands-on experience in a lab, they'll prepare you well for graduate school, prepare you well for for industry, and also prepare you well for internships. After my 2 summers at Bar-Ilan, I spent a few summers at Google. I spent the summer after that at Microsoft Research, and but it was Bar-Ilan. As I look back at all those summers as the most pivotal experience for me, it wasn't my time at Google. It was my time at Bar-Ilan for sure that set my career in motion. And so I would recommend you to look at those and take those very seriously. And again, they're not that hard to come by, but they can be really, really important in helping you build your career. Number 2, I would say, is follow your passion, and you'll be most successful if you do so. Don't do something because someone else wants you to, and don't do something because don't not do something because someone else thinks it's a bad idea, right? So don't go to graduate school because someone else tells you, oh, you really need to go to graduate school, you need to be a PhD. Don't not go to graduate school because someone says, oh, that's terrible, it's a waste of time, I'll go to industry. You should really, and it's a good question how to figure that out. I know, happy to talk if there are students that are struggling with this, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk offline about this. But and it doesn't only apply to graduate school, it applies to subfields in computer science. If you're interested in cryptocurrencies, go for it. If you're interested in AI, in machine learning, if you're interested, just follow your passion and you'll be most successful there. You'll be less successful following the dream that someone else has for you, and much more successful following the dream that you have for yourself. And so I would really urge you to, that doesn't mean don't rely on the advice of other people, but ultimately, you know what interests you. And a job, you'll be best at your job when it's not a job you do 9 to 5 and can't wait till it's over, but a job that you are loving and even in your free time are just looking into and continuing and just can't get enough of. And the only way you'll accomplish that is by following your passion. And it can be difficult to find your passion, but once you find it, definitely make decisions not to optimize what other people think or what other people want, but really what you want. There were so many people along the way, some of them my internship mentors that can tell me, you shouldn't be going to graduate school. It's a terrible waste of time. It's a terrible waste of money. Everything's terrible. And they may have been right for their own experiences, but for me, I have no regrets for what I did, and I would recommend others not to follow my path, but to follow your path and really figure out what that path is and do what makes you the most successful. The next one I'll say really applies to graduate research, but really can apply to other things in life as well. It always seems too late. When I got involved in Bitcoin research in 2013, it seemed like everything interesting in crypto had already been done. All the problems had been solved. I wish I would have been here just 3 years ago. Everything was open, all these great ideas, I could have had those, and everything's done. And you look back now, it's like 2013, we were just getting started. There was nothing there yet. And throughout my graduate career, though, whether it was in cryptocurrencies and cryptography and security, I had the same experience over and over. Whenever I had a great idea, I did a little bit of research, someone had already done it. And and this will always happen, right? Because there are lots of smart people out there, but you're also one of those. So keep working and keep trying, and look at the previous work not as a threat, but as a resource, and ask, how can I do this better? How can I build on this? What do I know? What can I apply to this? What of my experiences, what of my knowledge can I apply that will look at this problem a little differently? And that's really how research happened. The vast majority of research, and I talk about research, but it's also development in industry as well. The vast majority is not coming up with a completely new subfield, although that does happen from time to time, and maybe you'll be fortunate enough to stumble on one of those ideas. But the vast majority happens in incremental work and doing something better. And not only look at other people's work, but look back at your own work critically as well. In graduate school, the field of threshold signatures and ECDSA, it doesn't mean anything to you, but it was basically the way to secure Bitcoin transactions. When I looked at it in 2013, I wrote a paper. In 2015, I wrote a second paper on the same topic. In 2018, I wrote a third paper on the same topic. In 2020, I wrote a fourth paper on the same topic. And the idea is, And it was really the 2018 paper that saw serious adoption. There's some really big players in the space today that are building out this technology. And had I not looked at my own work critically, someone else would have. And indeed others did. When I published my 2018 paper, other research teams were building building the same technology, had come to the same ideas at the same time. And the idea is not only should you look at other people's work and say, hey, how can I do this better? Look at your own work and say, hey, how can I improve this? And that's how you turn a single paper not into an entire graduate career. When you become the expert in a domain and you are able to not look at something and move on, but look at it deeper and deeper and deeper and build a really, really vast knowledge. And over time, apply the new ideas you encounter to that ideas, your old ideas. One more, just a few more. Don't be afraid to try. The odds of getting into graduate school X or company Y may be quite low, but they're a whole lot lower if you don't apply. And if you fail, go ahead and try again. Interview processes can seem random. And I say this as someone that's also often on the other side of the interview process. Often, it's about the questions you get. You had a bad day, and sometimes you have off days, and also we all get better over time. So take those shots that seem improbable, and you will land a few of those likely. And if you don't, get back up and keep on trying. And that's the only way to get something. Because if you sit back and say, well, the chances of me getting this job that I want, or chances of me getting this into this graduate school are like 3% or 7%, and don't apply, then I can guarantee you that you won't get it. But if you do your best and try, you'll probably, you will have great opportunities and keep building up towards better and better opportunities over time. Just a few more. Optimize for knowledge, not grades. I know this seems like tried and everyone says it, but it's like really, really true. I speak for myself, but I know there are others like me as well. When I evaluate candidates, I put very, very little weight into GPA, like very little weight. I generally don't even look. And what I do look at is previous experience, interview performance, and the knowledge that you've amassed. So that's not to say like don't care about your grades at all. Often the two go hand in hand, but don't have like this approach, which I've seen before, of let me not take that class because that's a hard class and it might hurt my GPA if I get a B in that class and not an A. So I'll forego the knowledge of that class, right? To make sure that that's a really, really bad approach. You should maximize your YU experience to really build the knowledge. And that should be your primary thing that you're focusing on is how do I build the knowledge I'll need? Because the knowledge is what you'll need. The GPA it's really just an initial guardrail. And once you're past that, the things that you're going to need every day are not your GPA, not in any of that, but it's actually the knowledge that you built over time. And that's really, really hard to build later on. And towards that point, load up on CS theory classes as much as you can. These are probably the classes that you look at on the course schedule and say, hey, why does this class exist? Why am I supposed to take CS theory? Why do I need to do algorithms? I'm not even writing any code in this class. These math classes, like calculus, why do I need this? If you ask me, these are the most important classes that you could take. Learning new languages and new technologies is much, much easier to do on the job than building foundational knowledge. Algorithms, CS theory, math, these are the things that are going to differentiate you. And these are the things that you should use your YU experience to maximize and build your foundational knowledge of, because these are the things that are going to be much, much harder to study later on. But really, they'll be the things that help you work on the hardest problems over time. The hardest problems aren't about writing the code to implement a solution, but it's about figuring out what that solution is and then writing the code, or maybe not even writing the code, right? So really the foundational, and that's not, there's really important, there are many, that's not to say that there's not great opportunities in writing non-research level or breakthrough code either. But if you're a CS major in YU, I think you should take the theory classes very, very seriously and the algorithms classes. And I would, put a heavy focus on those and take as much of those as you can. And lastly, shameless plug, we're hiring. So if you're a graduating senior, feel free to reach out to me. It's Steven, Steven at offchainlabs.com. And you can also feel free to reach out to me as a resource as well. And thanks again for having me. Happy to answer any questions, and best of luck to you all.
Stephen, thank you so much for that. That was very very insightful, not only on what you do, but also your tips, which I think everybody can appreciate. I did receive two questions. Well, there's two questions in the chat right now. Number one, how powerful is it in the industry to go to a graduate school with a computer science major?
Great question. So it really depends on what you want to do. If you want to do CS research, if you want to be a researcher, it's very, very important. If you want to say write papers and be in a research lab and do really foundational work, it's important because that's the opportunities you have, the people you'll work with, that's where they are. They're in research labs, the professors you'll work with, or they're in industry research labs. But in order to get there, and I'm not going to say there aren't exceptions, but if you're interested in really researching and building the next fundamental technology, it's really important. That's more like PhD. I would say a master's program, you'll have some of that, but I think often they're more targeted towards industry. But if your goal is to work in industry, I would say it's really all about the experiences and the knowledge that you have. So if you can get your dream job out of if you can get your dream job as a senior graduate from YU, and that is your dream job, and you don't want to say be writing papers or doing academic research, then getting a master's program is probably not necessary. But if you're unsure, it's probably a great way to sort of figure that out. And it's at least in my experience, it's easier to spend a year now figuring that out than it is 10 years down the line. So I would make sure it's worth investing some time in if you're not sure to try out graduate school, in my experience. But really, it's about either the academic experience, academic research, foundational research on emerging fields, or it's about just getting you to the place where you'll need to be. Maybe you want to work in a specific subfield and you feel that you need to spend a year in a master's program on that to sort of hone your skills. So the master's program is not the end goal. The research is not the end goal. The graduate school is not the end goal, but maybe it's an important part of your journey to getting towards your industry goal, which is also totally, totally valid.
Great, thank you. And one more, because I do want to be mindful of your time as well, because I know you have a family obligation shortly. And I'll paraphrase the second one. So, I mean, you talked about a lot, with the crypto and the blockchain space and things like that. If I'm a student, I'm a first year on campus student at YU, and I'm interested in computer science or I'm interested in tech, what guidance would you give? How do I find out about the different areas of the industry, about the different firms like yours? What resources are out there, could you recommend that students might be able to turn to, in addition to obviously their professors and the resources at the Shevet Center and things like that?
Yeah, so the first one is obviously the professors, and as you mentioned, as I mentioned, I think the department is a lot more diversified than when I was there, and there are probably a lot more electives. So trying out different things there, I mean, not being afraid to try. Also, not back to what I said about the research experience for undergraduate. So again, I'll put out a little bit more details. I spent 2 summers at Bar-Ilan. My first summer there was not doing cryptography, was doing AI research, and it was enough for me to realize, like, hey, this is really, I like being in a research lab, but also I don't think this is what I like to be doing. So sometimes the negative experiences aren't really negative; they're great experiences and help you say this is great and this is not exactly what I want to be doing. But more broadly, in crypto, for example, because that's the field that I know best right now, there's such a vibrant community and welcoming community online. There, a lot of the conversation happens on Twitter. There's so much innovation going on. So just really, it has to do with, again, reading and starting with. Let me look into this field. Let me read a few introductory articles, and this could be for other fields as well. And then you'll know when you get there because you'll be hooked, and it won't be a labor of, oh, I really should read another article tonight to figure out what I want to do. It will be like, wow, I want to read the next one and the next one and the next one. And I can't get enough of this. And you'll just be like in this, down this rabbit hole, and you'll be so far down, you'll realize. So I would say, start reading about different fields here and there. And one, hopefully one will emerge as one that's super interesting to you. But also, that's, again, you don't have to fully specialize. There's nothing wrong with just enjoying writing code and working at a great industry, in a great company in an industry. And what you do is like, building front ends or building back ends. So you don't sort of need to specialize in a subfield, but the extent that you do, I think there's plenty of resources online. And again, for crypto in particular, if I'm happy to point people to good resources if they reach out to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. This has been a wonderful experience, and I thank you again for your time. Students, I know there were a couple extra questions that came in, both direct to me and to everybody. I'm happy to send them to Stephen afterwards and get them answered. So if you come up with something else, feel free to contact me directly. And Stephen was also obviously gracious enough to share his information as well. And we thank you for the opportunity of students to reach out that way as well. But thank you. Let's give a round of virtual applause and thank you.
Thanks for having me. Have a great night.
Of course. Great. One thing before we move on to the next portion of our program tonight, here in the Shavak Glavic Center, all members of the YU community are welcome to at our events. I would like to welcome Dr. Felix Glaubach and his son Baruch to the event this evening. We're very glad that you're here with us tonight, and you don't need to say anything, but I just want to acknowledge that, and I was very happy to see both your names here. So next up, we're going to hear from Mr. Ari Zoldan. He's the CEO of Quantum Media Group, a global marketing and research company based in New York City. As an on-air TV personality, Ari can be seen regularly on Fox News, CNN, CNNBC, and NBC, covering technology, business, and innovation. He's a frequent source for journalists and is quoted regularly in major media outlets. He holds press credentials on Capitol Hill and the United Nations, and is a member of the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. He's also one of the few selected individuals to hold the position as IBM Watson Futurist. And of course, he graduated from the SciSim School of Business with a degree in finance. He's here to tell us a little bit about the overall state of the tech industry from his obviously insider perspective. Ari, let's turn it over to you.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks for pulling, and Matt, thank you for the team for pulling this all together. There's looks like there's a great crowd here. Thank you for the introduction. It was 1997. I was sitting in the back of a SciSims class, and the professor gets up and he says, from now on, we're going to send your assignments via email. And he starts explaining what email was. He was going to send the assignment. He wasn't going to print it out and give it to us there, but he was going to send it over email. And everyone at YU now has an email address, and he was going through the process. And I remember at that moment when he was explaining email, the concept of email, I turned to somebody next to me and I said, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life." And that I mean, at the time, to think like, why couldn't the professor just, hand me the assignment? He's gonna go send it to me by email. We had to run to the library. We had to print it out over there. The whole thing made no sense. And I just, I kind of look back at that. And that was really my first entree, my first foray into the world of technology. Obviously, I was very, very wrong. But I very quickly, I fell in love with technology, not technology, the technical side of technology, but more on the business side of technology. And what I mean by that is I didn't go to school. I majored in finance. I didn't take a single computer science class. I'm the most non-technical person on this planet. My wife is still asking me to configure our DVD player, and why we have a DVD player to begin with. I'm still a little bit taken aback, but I love the business of technology. I love the fact that it is such a dynamic space. The industries, the subcategories that you could get involved in, whether it's virtual reality, augmented reality, blockchain, cryptocurrency, robotics, quantum computing, you don't longer have to pigeonhole yourself. When you say you're a technologist, it's so broad I think in a really good way, and you could kind of pivot into different types of technologies. And in our firm specifically, as a marketing agency, we work with these type of companies that are representing these type of technologies. So I get the opportunity to be able to learn about the different types of products and services being rolled out in the tech industry. And it's been an incredible journey for me. It's every day I'm learning something new. There's always something new that's coming out of the tech industry. So we always have our hand on the pulse. Something that I thought about it. I'm an adjunct professor. I just joined YU and teaching a business class, which I'm enjoying incredibly. What I've noticed from the students that I have in class, different than when I was in school in 97, 98, was that the students that, the group that I went to school with, their line of thinking, I think, was more linear. It was kind of finance, accounting, or nothing. There was only kind of two tracks. Today, it's amazing that you have a school of entrepreneurship, that you guys are doubling down on marketing. You have the ability also to work within the university and the different departments to be able to leverage their experience. I think that's extremely valuable and really, really unique. Some things that I would strongly suggest. You are in the greatest city in the world, I have to say, objectively, and networking is key to absolutely everything you do, and I really can't focus on that enough. Living in New York City, you have access to conferences, you have access to meetups, you have your current alumni network. Most of them are based in New York. I strongly suggest students start leveraging on the network, because you're going to need one person to open up that door into the world outside of school, and you don't know who it's going to be. And that's why I think it's so important to network the minute you get into college until the day that you leave, because you're going to need, the people that you meet are going to be key in building relationships also after college. I think, I really believe that you guys are in a very, very special place being at YU. You're really in the crossroads, and I think given the fact that you are in New York makes it very, very unique as well, because you could go to a lot of networking events where if your college was out in middle America, you wouldn't have those opportunities. So I would suggest, if you're going on any type of interviews, I've always found when I'm interviewing people, I always love to ask them a couple of just very pointed questions. I like to ask them what they're currently reading right now. It could be, if it's a book, if it's a magazine, it could be anything. I kind of like to gauge their interest level, what they're reading about. I look at their LinkedIn profile also, believe it or not. So it's definitely not too early. Brush up on your LinkedIn profile. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. And you can start branding yourself now. If you think you want to go into, let's say, artificial intelligence or IoT, build a Twitter account also, and start tweeting and retweeting and building hashtags around certain keywords too. I like to know, when I'm interviewing someone, I'd like to know what even if they're not necessarily an expert today, I always ask them what they'd like to be an expert in. And then I like to kind of work our way backwards from there. So building yourself as an expert in any sub-vertical today in technology is not that difficult, because we have access to blogging and social media, and that could afford you the ability to build a brand around yourself. And I do really encourage students to start working on their brand like the moment they enter college. I think it's extremely, extremely valuable. So yeah, having said that, I'd love to open up the floor for questions. I'd love to hear what some of the students have to say. So.
Sure, I did get one very pointed question and quite simple. But before I get to that, I just want to thank you for kind of touching on a lot of the soft skills that are also very important, because many of these students are computer science majors where they're really deep into the technical skills and things like that. But it's super important, as you mentioned, to be very well rounded in the soft skills as well, because then you make yourself, you create your brand. You're a brilliant, computer scientist, and then you have these soft skills where you can navigate, amongst people that may not speak that sort of same language, per se. So I thank you for kind of bringing up those points.
And on that note, sorry, Todd, I wanted to just, double down on what you're saying, that, on the soft skills. I mean, 100%, people want to work with likable people, like, yes, they want to work with smart and capable people, but you also want to, come off and you want to be socially socially connected as well. And I think that's really important, working on communication skills and even things like eye contact. I was in Tel Aviv a couple of years ago. I was giving a seminar. I think there were like 400 or 500 business leaders there. This kind of will paint a picture. And it was a mindfulness conference. So of course, no one had their cell phone. I mean, they would be very embarrassed if they walked into into the auditorium with a cell phone. But, 500 people there, 250 pairs were in the crowd. And I got up there and I said, I'd like everyone to turn either to the right or to the left of you and stare at them in the eye for 60 seconds. That was the exercise. That was their only assignment, was to turn to the right, to the left, and stare at the person for 60 seconds. Absolutely fascinating. There wasn't, I don't think there was one couple in that room that was able to maintain eye contact for 60 seconds. It made people, so we called people up to the stage, asked them, why couldn't you look at them for 60 seconds? It made people feel very uncomfortable, very vulnerable. They never actually stopped for 60 seconds in their entire life and really focused on someone. That for me was very, very telling. And I think that's an extremely important, what you talked about, Todd, like a soft skill to be able to bring into an interview. Just making very simple things, in my opinion, make huge, huge differences. And coming off as likable and friendly and smiling, we kind of overlook this stuff, and making eye contact is so, so important.
Great, thank you so much. So I do have two questions here. So first, quite simply, what does it mean to network? Like, what does that even mean?
Sure. You could go to Meetup. I mean, the goal is for you to start building your, we don't have Rolodexes anymore, but your contact list. So, I mean, you could type in to Google conferences in New York City. You could go tech conferences in New York City. There's probably hundreds of them across New York City, Brooklyn, Queens on any given night. Going to these events, building relationships with these people, grabbing their business cards, following up with them, and just start maintaining some sort of connection. Even if there isn't an ask necessarily, what you're doing is just you're building your network, and you can start as early as today.
Great, thank you. Just an addendum to that, in the Shevet Globak Center, we definitely have some resources for students that are looking for sort of extracurricular, organizations or conferences and things like that, that you might be able to attend and interested. So please feel free to make an appointment with a career advisor. And secondly, what are the key components that go into a personal brand?
I would say industry knowledge, understanding. I mean, first it's finding what you're connected to, what you're passionate about. Even if you you don't have to know definitively whether or not you want to, but at least head in a direction. So, if you like technology, you're not sure though, if you think you want to go into cryptocurrency or IoT or virtual reality. But becoming an expert, I think, and staying current in the news is extremely important, and being able to disseminate information or retweeting different, or at least understanding the different information that's being distributed out on the web, and connecting yourself to those different news outlets. So the first thing about building brand, I think, is finding out what and who you want to get connected to, and then becoming an expert in that space, and then things will start to open up. Got it.
Thank you. And last question, because I know we're going a little bit over here. And for any, there's actually a ton of questions coming in here, and I apologize I won't be able to get to all of them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to aggregate them. I will send them over to Ari. And if Ari, if you're open to students reaching out to you on LinkedIn or email, please do let us know. Because I'm sure you're going to receive some follow-up as well. And this is a two-part question. What are you reading right now?
So I just got into Daniel Silva. He's a great author. I never read his stuff before. He's been around a while. It's called The Kill Artist. So completely unrelated to work. I'm absolutely I'm addicted to the book, and so that's what I'm reading right now. So
Thank you. And second part of the question from the same student, over a phone Zoom interview, how do you show that you're a social and personable person? Because like you could do the on-counting and things like that, but it may not be quite as effective. So what are some of your tips to coming across as personable, in this sort of new reality we live in virtually?
I think smiling, as very, very simple things. I mean, I think like, if we're sitting here talking now, you'll see a lot of students kind of like going back and forth. It kind of shows a bit, shows nervousness. So I think trying to stay as focused as possible, but also feeling light and smiling makes a huge, huge difference in terms of perception.
Great. Thank you so much. And last question, this is mine. If any student would like to follow up with a question, is LinkedIn the best method to contact you, or?
Yes, please find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter. Actually, I just published a post that I wrote on effective communication, an article that I wrote in Forbes. I posted that on LinkedIn, talks about effective communication skills. So everyone's, feel free to take a look at that. And of course, anybody that wants to reach out to me, if I could be a resource in any way to leverage my network, you're more than welcome to also, share my email address. I'm happy to work with any student.
Amazing. And I will say it's, we connected the other day, and it's quite impressive seeing, what you've kind of posted to your, like 32,000 followers or something like that. And I was going through a lot of the articles you had written, and they were quite interesting. So I definitely encourage the students to connect with you that way. Yeah, as I mentioned, I do have a bunch of questions that I just simply can't get to due to the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aggregate them. I'll send them to you directly along with their student's name, just so you know who they're coming from in case they follow up afterwards via LinkedIn. But Ari, thank you so much for your time. This is a wonderful perspective to add to this tech event, and we sincerely appreciate it.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Great. So now we're going to move to our Young Alumni panel portion of the evening. We have a group of 5 amazing professionals, as I mentioned earlier, very diverse backgrounds as far as majors and schools and things like that, also the types of organizations that they work at or will be working at. So let's just go ahead and get started. I do just want to make sure we have everybody here, which I think we do. Cool. So Jason, Talia, Mendel, Joey, and Aviva, welcome. It is a pleasure to have you all here tonight. I did send the questions ahead of time, so I'm just going to kind of go through them here. But let's just we'll start with introductions. Let's get everybody, let's let everybody get to know you. And if you could just kind of mention why you major, what your current role is, what your current company is, and just a super high level brief description of what you do, because we'll get into a little bit more of the details a little bit later during the discussion. And Jason, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Brody. I majored in the BEMA major. And a brief description. I'm currently working at LinkedIn. The role is called Business Operations and Strategy. And we're a small team primarily made up of ex-consultants that advise the executive team on the long-term strategy of the company. And then we help operationalize and execute on that vision that we set.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Talia?
Thanks, Todd. Hi, everyone. My name is Talia Leitner. I'm currently a senior at Stern studying computer science. But this past summer, I worked as an information technology analyst at Jefferies. I worked on the fixed income development team as a software developer. And I will be returning to Jefferies in June upon graduation, where I'll likely be joining the compliance team as a software engineer and to help build in-house applications for the firm.
Great. Thank you, Talia. Mendel?
Thanks, Todd. So I'm a team lead of data at Mosaic Learning, where we build custom conference and e-learning platforms for corporations, trade unions, government as well. I graduated from CATS in 2019, Master's in Quantitative Economics, and that was it was an interesting transition in my life because I started off in finance and went to continue my career in finance by going to the quantitative economics program. While there, one of my professors was teaching data science, and he pulled me into the crypto startup that he was the head of research at. And so at that point I was doing data science combined with financial time series type of things, and eventually transitioned into straight technology, which is where I am now, where I basically manage end-to-end in regards to all the designs that the company does for data. I work with the rest of the team, but my general role is whatever parts of stuff we're working on that have to do with data, it's the type of things that I would work on.
Thank you. Joey?
Hey, thanks, Todd. And thanks, Barbara. Also happy to be here tonight. My name is Joey Senders, graduated from YC with a degree in economics back in 2019. I work at Accenture, and I guess my official title is Business and Integration Analyst. So it's kind of like the cross section between business and technology. In my current role right now, on my current project, I'm working with a large telecommunications client, and I'm doing what's called continuous improvement. So it's kind of quasi project management, quasi tech strategy. So we look at the whole tech process. We're working with sales technology right now and determining what needs to be fixed, how things are running currently, and kind of set the vision for what that will look like down the road, trying to continuously improve that. So yeah.
Thank you, Joey. And last but certainly not least, Aviva.
So excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me back to the TechUCation. Hi, I'm Aviva. I majored in computer science and I minored in math at Yeshiva University. I'm currently working for Aviva as a data engineer, and I've been in the analytics talent community for just over a year now. I primarily work to set up data pipelines, make sure those systems are running smoothly. I work with a lot of data migration, which is moving data from source to target. A lot of data migration now is moving on-prem systems to the cloud. So that's what I'm primarily involved in. And it's called the extract, transform, and load processes. I also work with the overall execution and data validation of those same pipelines. And something which is really dear to my heart and more on the soft skills side is teaching and making technical training for my team.
Great, thank you so much. Awesome. So now we've heard a little bit about what everybody's doing now, but I'm curious as to how you got there. Since we're we'll start with you, Aviva, on this one, since you're on my screen currently. So how did you end up securing the role at Aviva? What sort of previous internships did you have? Was it a conversion? And just kind of talk about what led to your current position.
Sure, yeah. I actually started off working in the physics lab with Dr. Santos. I was studying quantum mechanics at the time, and I was doing a lot of coding around many body quantum systems, doing a lot of math integrals, etc. And that's actually a really good suggestion if you can't apply to an internship yet, maybe you're a sophomore or you've been having trouble with that. There's so many professors at YU, this is just a little tidbit there, that would do research in the math areas, physics areas, and in the computer science departments. Definitely email them, ask them about their research, and maybe go on with them for a summer. Highly recommend. So I did that for one summer, and then I realized that I really, really liked data science and computer science. I was also an intern at Aviva, and I worked on a large client project at a big pharmaceutical company, think the vaccines now. Some of them, I worked for one of those companies. And I love my project team. I learned so much about them from the day-to-day life of consulting, and it was a really great experience. I developed a lot of crucial soft skills and consulting skills, and then worked really, really hard, thank God, and was able to return full time. So I would say definitely when you're applying for internships and when you have an internship, being able to stand out and contribute value to your team helps you to transition to a full-time position at the same company. So that's what I would recommend.
Great, thank you so much. Joey, how about you? What has your path been?
Yeah, great question. My path is actually complete opposite from Aviva's. I worked at a summer camp for almost every year of while I was at YU. I definitely believe in what Ari was talking about earlier in his speech, that building soft skills is super, super important. So I fostered those skills while I was in college. I also had no idea what I wanted to do post-college. Like I said, I majored in economics, and so I didn't really have a tech background. The truth is, I did do a coding boot camp in my junior year during that summer, which was 1,000 hours of coding in a bunch of different languages. And that was a good learning experience, but mostly what I learned is that I didn't want to code. And so, the reason I bring up that I had a pretty non-traditional background is that if you're somebody that hasn't had an internship or somebody that hasn't, taken tech courses, it's definitely not too late. At a firm like Accenture, and I'm sure a lot of other great firms that are represented tonight, they do a really good job at training you. And I know that at Accenture, for example, they're always looking for smart, capable people that they can throw into a variety of settings. So it doesn't necessarily matter if your skill set is completely, solid coming out of college. If you're applying to software engineering, you're obviously going to have some type of software engineering skills. But for technology consulting, I think they do appreciate people that have non-traditional backgrounds. And some advice that I would give is, definitely build those soft skills like Ari was talking about, but also take it a step further and go out of your comfort zone, connect with as many people as possible. The way I got my job is through networking. I went on LinkedIn, I looked up people that were alumni from YU that worked at Accenture and a million different firms. I applied to probably 200 and, ended up in an excellent situation, which is a lot of fun day-to-day basis. So that's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Mendel, you've had quite an interesting background as well, which you kind of talked very briefly about in the beginning, but maybe you could expand on that a little bit. Like, how did you what's led up to, you being the team lead data at Mosaic?
So I was pulled in as a data engineer. Incidentally, just to repeat the point that everyone else has been making so far about the importance of networking, I would say every single job that I've ever had has been through some sort of networking in different strange ways. This one actually was a relative of mine who referred me to a recruiter that he had previously worked with who was looking to fill this position. So it was an interesting jump. And so here it was, I came in as the data engineer, as the first person who they had hired specifically to only do data, and start off as data engineer and just worked hard and assumed more responsibility as it came up. So that's something that I would suggest to everyone here is whatever position that you're in, when there's space, when there's responsibilities that need to be filled, don't be scared to take on more, because you'll push yourself, you'll learn something new, you'll work with more and more people, and that's a great way to move forward.
Great. Thank you. And now, Jason, one of the questions I know the career advisors get relatively often is, what can I do with a BEMA major? Or information and decision sciences, as it's called now. And you're an amazing example of what you can do as a BEMA major. So why don't you talk a little bit about, what's kind of brought you to where you are now at LinkedIn?
Absolutely. And you could do great things with a BEMA major, especially with the technical and harder skills such as SQL or anything else data analytics related. I also fell into the bucket of not being exactly sure what I wanted to do. And I'll share, I guess, two things. The first is how I thought through how I wanted to begin the beginning of my career, which is just looking for a company in a position that hits three buckets. First, working for establishing credibility and working for a well-known company. The second is being able to work with a cohort of people and people that I can network with. And the third is just any opportunity where I could learn a lot. That way, when I do have a better idea of what I want to do, I have the credibility, I have the network, and I've learned a lot in the process, and it makes for an easier transition. And the way that I got my job, it's an interesting story. During the interview process, I think around 24 hours before the interview, I received a prompt that I would be speaking to the head of HR of an e-commerce company that has 100 employees and is looking to hire 5 engineers and 7 salesmen. And I had to essentially sell them on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn's main software is a recruiting software. So it shows your ability to really understand how their products work, but also be able to have a communication and help sell it. And after the 10 or 15 minutes where I was speaking to the interviewer who acted as that HR executive, she said, "Jason, it seems like you actually came particularly prepared to the interview. Can I ask what you did to prepare?" And I told her, I was like, "I can tell you, but are you sure you want the honest answer?" And she looked at me and smirked. And I said, "Well, I honestly don't know anything about LinkedIn's products or how to sell." So I called LinkedIn sales team and said, "Hi, my name's Jason. I'm the head of HR of an e-commerce company looking to hire 100 employees, hire 5 engineers and 7 salesmen." I wrote down all the questions and tactics they used, and that's how I sold them on LinkedIn. So that's sort of the story that helped translate over. But ultimately, those, I guess, 2 points that I made are what really struck home and what I would suggest.
Great, thank you so much. Now, Talia, you're a little bit unique on the panel in that you're still a current student, but you're also very fortunate that you have your offer for after graduation as a full-time tech analyst at Jefferies. Can you talk about, many of the students attending are perhaps applying to internships right now, or they already have their internships for next summer and they're kind of curious about what to expect, or perhaps their first time on campus and they're going to be recruiting within the next year or so. Can you just talk a little bit about your experience at Jefferies this past summer, and what did you do throughout your time there to best position yourself for success and to ensure that you'd get that conversion at the end?
Sure. So this summer, as I mentioned earlier, I was working on the fixed income development team. So what I did was I built a dashboard visualizing the fixed income data for the business analysts. It was really a prototype because the software they had been using before, but only had until the previous day's data displayed. So my the dashboard that I had built also included the real-time data. So it was really like a prototype. And so my supervisor, he was pretty fluent in Python, which was a language I used to build the dashboard, but he wasn't as experienced as I was in the language. So it was actually pretty interesting where a lot of times where I had questions for him, he would send me to other members of our team. So my supervisor was one of the vice presidents of the team, and he would turn me to the other vice presidents of the team and tell me to go reach out to them and ask for help. And I felt like I'm just an intern, who am I just to reach out to these vice presidents and bother them about my questions? But I was so lucky, everybody on my team, and I really found that everybody at Jefferies, it's a very unique place. They were so warm and supportive and really there to help you succeed. Just for those who don't know, Jefferies is an investment bank. And unlike what I hear about other banks, it really is such a warm environment. We had a 2-day in-person intern event because the rest of the summer our internships were virtual. And during that event, all the interns were invited to Rich Handler, who's the CEO's house. And I got to go up to him with a group of my friends who were also interns. And we went up to him and we spoke personally to the CEO of this major investment bank, which is unheard of for other places. So really, Jefferies is truly a unique place. But to answer how I wanted to make myself stand out for a return offer, I would say was that I was unique in the sense that I had the opportunity to meet my supervisor on a daily basis, where other interns met with their supervisors maybe twice a week. But that's also a lot of pressure, which means every day I would make sure that I had progress to report. And even if I were struggling with something, I would always make sure to outline to my supervisor what steps I was taking and who I contacted in order to overcome the issue that I was facing. So I think that's something very critical. Whenever you always should be prepared, and whenever you're going to meet with a supervisor, always make sure that you have some sort of progress to report. Tell them that you learned something new, whatever it is. And finally, also, like I had mentioned before, how I got to reach out to different vice presidents. I really got to spend time networking, and I got to meet different people. I was assigned a side task for the business continuity and disaster recovery team. And I got to end up networking with one of the heads of the whole intern program, because she was part of that team. And one of the last days of my internship, she called me and asked personally for my feedback, and really was interested in hearing more. And also the end of my regular project, when I finished building that dashboard that I mentioned before, I presented it to that team lead of my fixed income team. And when I did that, it was basically an interview at the end, where the team lead was asking me, this is my boss's boss, and he was asking me all these questions like, what am I doing in the future? And I had received advice from someone else in the team about how she had interviewed and what she thought they'd be looking for. She mentioned machine learning, she mentioned different things. So I made sure to use those key terms. I'm taking a machine learning course now. So I told him I'm taking a machine learning course in the fall. So when I one day return to Jeffries, as I was hoping to, I'll have that under my belt. So really just as everyone else has mentioned, networking is really so important, especially for students in YU. I really say take advantage of the Shevet Goldbach Center. Because of them, I was referred to Jeffries, and I really think that helped me at least get to the interview phase. So really look on YUCL. If there are any job listings you're interested in, apply. Sometimes they'll even take your resume and send it to their contacts there. So I really recommend that.
Great, thank you so much. Now, just one follow-up to that. Did you know that you wanted to work in fintech when you came to YU, or did this just kind of happen organically?
So I actually started in Sims. I was interested in finance originally. So I was taking accounting. I took finance in my second semester. I liked it, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. So I then took a computer science course in my second semester, and that I fell in love with. So when I was applying last fall for internships, I felt like this would be a really good in between, where I had originally been interested in business. I'd always wanted to work on Wall Street. I thought that was very exciting. It's a really fast-paced industry I'd be interested in. So I thought this was a really happy medium where I could do software engineering or something of that sort, which I really enjoy, but in the environment that I was looking to work in.
Good, thank you so much. So this next one, I'll kind of throw it out to both Joey and Jason. With the Beaver major and then the math for Joey. So I mean, this event is really geared towards any student that wants to work in the tech industry. Not necessarily computer science. There are many computer science students here. I recognize the name, but I also see some students that don't fit that description. So for a student that may not be a computer science major who is strictly interested in software engineering, and obviously that's kind of self-explanatory, what guidance could you give to students that are interested in tech but may not know what areas might be applicable to them? How do they discover what exists out there? And it's very similar to what I asked to Stephen earlier. But besides, faculty and internal YU resources and things like that. And Joey, I'll put you on the spot first.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so coming from a non-traditional background, it's easy to think that you don't have the skill set or the know-how to get a job in tech. I would say that is not the case. Obviously there are a couple of ways that you can get familiar with what's going on in tech. I think anybody, regardless of what they're interested in, whether you're interested in just doing real estate for the rest of your life and not being technical at all, I think it's really important to understand tech trends and where the world is going. Just like Ari was talking about, doing when he first started with email back in 1997, I think is what he said. It's important to understand tech trends in general and to kind of get your feet wet with that. I will say that internships are a really great way to find out more about tech. Networking is a really great way to find out more about tech. But I think the number one way to, I guess, make yourself useful is just to say that you're interested. You know, whoever you talk to, whether you understand, you know, tech, whether you understand what they're talking about at the time, ask questions. People always want to talk about technology. People always want to talk about things that they're interested in. If you just, you know, reach out to, when I was in college, I used to do a lot of informational interviewing. So I used to send cold emails or get somebody to connect me, but to people that were, you know, CEOs, but some people that were managers, senior managers, partners, whatever it was. People love to talk about themselves. People love to talk about what they do. And so that's a great way to learn more about kind of what's out there. And when I got my job, it's a little bit of a funny story. So I mentioned earlier that I connected with a guy who went to YU, who basically pushed my resume. So that's something really good to do, by the way. And I'm happy to do that for, you know, whomever. So we, but I originally had applied for management consulting, which is totally unrelated to technology. And he said, got back to me and he's like, we don't have any jobs right now in management, but I think the world is going toward tech anyway. And I think that that'd be an awesome position. So can you alter your resume in some way to, you know, paint a little bit more of a picture about tech? And though I didn't really have such a tech background, I did do that coding boot camp. So I put a couple of buzzwords on there, but I more painted the picture of I'm really interested in technology. I'm interested in applying myself to learn more about that. And I think ultimately, if you can speak to that and you can speak to the fact that you're just hungry for knowledge, that's something that will, you know, go a long way. So that is what I would say is the way you break into the industry. Great.
Jason, anything to add to that? And I'll add one question on top of that, which I think I know the history of the story, but I just want to confirm. Just talk about your application to LinkedIn. Like, were you referred there? Or was it just a cold application online, or how did that work?
For sure, absolutely. So I'll answer the first question first, and then we'll dive into that. And yeah, like breaking into the tech industry definitely seems a little bit more unconventional from YU than accounting and finance. But I have heard there has been tremendous progress over the last few years, especially with the Career Center. So definitely would strongly recommend leveraging the Career Center early on. And I do think it's important to demonstrate interest, but if you could show a track record of you actually taking action on that interest, I think that's important as well. Any technical skills, regardless of what your major is, I think is crucial. I mentioned before, SQL, anything related to Excel, anything data analytics related is important, especially because any strategic and operational roles are very, very data driven, especially in today's age. So if you could show that you have any background to really demonstrate that interest, I think that goes a long way. Another thing I struggled with was like understanding the different opportunities. I could speak for like within like particular tech companies. The way I view these organizations are there's like the sales side of the organization and the product and engineering side. If you're more extroverted, I would look into the sales side. There's a lot of opportunity to make good money on that end. And it's very conversational. You're on the forefront of the go-to-market engine. So that's an opportunity. Then on the product side, there's like associate product manager roles where you have like the opportunity to build like products, build product features, work cross-functionally, although you usually need a little bit more of a tech background. And then there are some like business rotational programs as well that give you more of like a holistic understanding of the different departments. Although I think those are a little bit more rare from New York. And then the process as well, like for established companies, it really comes down to taking a list of like a number of different companies that you're interested in, seeing which ones have entry-level careers, and then reaching out to people. Obviously, warm introductions are good, but cold outreach is totally fine. And like I remember like thinking I was interested in marketing. I reached out to the CMO of PepsiCo. He responded a week later. I reached out to one of the co-founders of ClassPass, which was like in $1 billion startup, met with them in their office. Like people are interested in having conversation as long as you're genuinely interested in them. And then when it comes to joining tech startups, I would like write up a list of credible VCs and check out their portfolio company. And you can either reach out to the VC analysts and VC associates to see what they're excited about and ask them for referrals, because it's good for them to help out their portfolio companies. Or you could just use that as like a reference point to check out different startups that have some credibility because they are VC backed by established companies. Back to like my particular application, it ties into a lot of that stuff. The interview story is really what took me over the edge, but I did leverage the Career Center very early on. They did help me for my resume. They helped me for my application. They helped me prepare for interviews, which goes a long way. And it's very important to be very polished in your interviews because there are other people that it's just extremely competitive. So a lot of those different things did play a role. And yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
There's one more thing, Todd, that I wanted to just say that Jason
Please.
reminded me of when he said that it's important to prove that you're putting the work in, have that track record. There are a lot of really good resources online. Obviously, the Career Center at YU is great, but there are a lot of resources online if you want to learn actual tech skills. I just did a quick search. There's Code Academy, Udemy, Coursera, Skillshare, all those types of things, which are free or very cheap at the least. And those are ways to, say, hey, I was really interested in SQL, really interested in Python, really interested in HTML and CSS. So I put the work in. I spent 3 weeks and I learned how to code in Python. And like that will show them, wow, okay, he didn't take a college course, but this kid actually is interested in what he's talking about. So he went and did a 3-week crash course in this. And I think that those are really cool programs to take advantage of.
Great. So Aviva, you actually, you work directly with the recruiting team at Aviva, and we thank you for that, for the info sessions and things like that and those connections. But you also work one-on-one with a lot of students, whether you're referring them internally over there or perhaps helping them, with other opportunities, like to prepare for other opportunities and things like that. What is some general advice you can give to students that are either recruiting right now or will be over the upcoming year? From your perspective, from the true tech background.
Sure, yeah. I have some general points and then I have some specific points for Avanade. So I'll start off generally. When you're applying to a company and you have an interview, you want to research the company. You want to go on their website, know what they're all about. You want to know their core values, what they care about, because that's what you're going to care about. And what I found was really helpful was you look at their core values and look how that fits in directly to your past experience. Let's say, for example, my company was very interested in diversity and I'm Jewish. So I brought that up a lot on the interview. And then another thing was I was a waitress and a mashgicha on Shabbat at YU. And my company is a consulting firm, so they care a lot about customer service. So I was able to tie in a lot of my previous experiences that I had with the company's core values. So that's number one. Number two, definitely read the job posting and read what qualifications and skills they're looking for. Make sure that when you're answering questions on the interview, they're going to ask you specific questions, but you're going to come in with points that you want to cover. You want to come in with your selling points of why you want to work there and why you're a good candidate. And those are going to match up with the job position, because then they're going to think, oh, you're a good fit, and you are a good fit because you made yourself be a good fit for that position. And I would say you don't have to have all the skills. You don't have to have all the qualifications. That actually deters a lot of people from applying. Let's say you have maybe 3 out of them or 4. I would say still apply, still try. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So it can't really hurt at all. Another thing I would say is, let's say, we mentioned SQL or Python. One thing that I did to prepare for the technical side of the interview was I just spent hours in the library coding on the whiteboard. A lot of people do leak code nowadays if interviews are online. But for me, when I wrote it out on the whiteboard and I just sat there and coded and solved all those problems, it really helped me to prepare for, oh, what happens if the problem was handed to you like this or like this? And that practice, when they ask you those questions in the moment, will get you thinking. And another thing I would say is you have to know everything on your resume. You have to be able to speak to and explain every single project, every single experience you've had. It shows that you have good technical understanding, and it also shows that you know what you're talking about and you come polished. But at the same time, you want to also speak from your heart, and you want to find something that you're very passionate about as well. and you want to let that shine through. So as much as you want to know your resume and you want to say like, oh, this is what I did on this project, this is what I did on that project, you want to have the why. You want to have what you're passionate about, the why, and how you made an impact. So that's also very, very important. Is let's say you worked at a company and you helped to build a dashboard, but then what did that dashboard do? How did it impact the company? How did it help maybe to increase sales? Maybe it helped to distribute resources in a better way. And how are you a part of that? I think that's very, very important, because when you're applying to a company, you want to show that you're going to add value, and then they're going to take you. Another part is on the soft skills. Everyone's talking about that, but you want to show that you're a leader and that you can be a valuable member of the team. You want to be the whole package. You want to say, okay, I can do tech, but I could also work with other people and communicate. So being a leader on campus, taking positions, whether it's even a secretary role or a logistics coordinator role in a club, shows that you're taking on leadership. If you work like in the IT center at YU, or you're a waitress, mashgicha on Shabbat, something like that can also show leadership. And another two things that are specific to Avanade is very focused on learning. We're always pushing for extra Microsoft certifications. Our company's partnered with Microsoft and also Accenture. Shout out to Joey. They back a lot of our trainings with Microsoft training. So they send us to different professional trainings, and there are a lot of courses available. But that means that people who come to Avanade are very interested in learning more. And there's so much technology out there, and there's a lot always, everyone's talking about, oh, what is the next thing in the news, etc. So you can, you want to be and show that you're a lifelong learner and that you're excited about this technology, but then you actually go and do it. So that's specifically for Avanade. And then another thing is Avanade cares about making a genuine human impact. It's not just about sales, it's also about changing people's lives. And a lot of the software that we make directly like speeds up business processes that could take a lot longer. For example, as an intern, I worked on a financial software that I met the person who we made it for. She would, before we made the software, it would take her maybe 2 months to do some financial transactions. And after we made the software, this same process could be done in 5 hours. So we greatly improved her life and how much time she had to put in to do things like that. So at Avanade, it's not just about, okay, we're going to help make money, et cetera, but it's genuinely improving the lives of the people who we're working with and those companies and all of that. So those are the two things: is you want to show that you're a people person and you really care about helping people, making a genuine human impact. And Avanade is very into volunteering and giving back. So that's something else I would say as well, is you want to work with people, you want to be a people person, and you want to care about like the environment as a whole and giving back to the global tech community.
Amazing points, Aviva. Thank you so much, as always. Now, Mendel, some students here, maybe they are seniors, maybe they have their job, or they're considering going to graduate school, or they're not really sure. Could you talk a little bit about the quantitative economics program at CATS, and how has it helped set you up for success at Mosaic?
The quantitative economics program, when I was there, it focused on almost two paths. There was the traditional math and economics, some theoretical, some more directly practical. And in a lot of ways, that kind of that would prepare people for the research track. On the other hand, we also did a lot of things in regards to statistics, analytics, as well as then data science, time series, and forecasting and things like that. That's obviously the way that I ended up going, and it's been fantastic for me. It definitely prepared me for what I was getting for the position that I took right after CATS. We were doing financial time series analytics for crypto. We built myself, my colleague, and my professor, who then became my boss. We built something called Luca Prime, which is a crypto index that tracks cryptocurrencies that are traded across multiple exchanges all around the world, and fits it according to GAAP and IFRS standards in order that our clients, who were basically spanned the entire institutional crypto industry, with very large names that were managing billions of dollars. Some were hedge funds, some were pension funds, other institutional clients. So they came to us for the tax software, and we were then able to deliver for them an additional data software that they could then use for many of their other things. And incidentally, recently, it became a core part for the S&P's crypto index. So that was very cool. But definitely coming from CATS, learning with the Financial Times series and the tech side of economics and finance was very useful to move into this.
Great, thank you so much. And just real quick, I did also notice on your LinkedIn that you list two sort of extra credentials, the Microsoft Artificial Intelligence one and the Tableau Essential Training. Just really briefly, you know, like what are those? Like, and is that something you would recommend for students to kind of seek out optionally?
So the Tableau Essential Training was, I think I was just sitting around and I was like, hey, this looks like something interesting, something I should look into. So I just took the course, learned a little bit about Tableau. I actually have never used it in a professional setting. It was just something that I was interested in looking into. The Microsoft Professional Certificate in Artificial Intelligence, I jumped into that one because it was actually, we had an education credit at my company at Luca. And so I figured that I would look into it. It was directly relevant, obviously, to what we were doing. We were already learning some forms of machine learning for what we were doing, and this would give me a broad understanding of many different types. It covered basically every field of machine learning, not particularly deep or specialized, but deep enough that you could say like, hey, you know, I've actually kind of dived into this. I have a pretty good understanding of how these things work at a not so beginner level. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's offered anymore, but I would definitely say that for anyone who is interested, there are fantastic resources all around for diving into these technologies, and each of these technologies themselves are their own entire field. So you can pick and choose, and you can also dive really deep into any of these.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, Todd, could I jump in about the value of certifications for
absolutely
a consulting firm? Sure.
Sure.
So as a consultant, you're staffed on many different projects. And when a client is reviewing your resume or your one pager and your skill set, if you have these credentials, then it's kind of like a proof to show that you know these technologies and therefore you're certified in them. It's your credentials and your qualifications that prove to the client, okay, this is a valuable resource that is trained in these technologies. They have a basic understanding of them, or sometimes if they're deeper in more pointed certifications, then you know that they have a more depth in that area. So it basically gives your clients a very good idea of what you know and what you don't know. So I've definitely heard that, and I've got some myself, and I'm working on some more. So that's something at Aviva, and I would say Accenture is definitely care about.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we are at 9 o'clock right now, and I don't want to take up any more of our panelists' time, which they graciously donated to us tonight. You know, I think we've covered some amazing points here, and I thank you all for your insight. I'm sure it's appreciated by the students as well. Students, if you do have questions, you know, I would encourage you to reach out to these individuals on LinkedIn or reach out to me, and I'll figure out how to get you connected. You know, I know that I believe Joey and Aviva will be at the technology meet and greet on Friday. So you're more than happy to speak with them there directly as well, one-on-one. Regarding Talia and Jeffries, Jeffries is still hiring the tech analyst for next summer, and I'm happy to send resumes over. If you haven't applied already, please feel free to reach out to me directly, or Barbara, who I'm sure everybody knows, and we'll make sure to get your resume over to them. But I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. This really was an incredible session, and I can't thank everybody enough for being a part of it. So thank you all again, and have an absolutely wonderful night. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.